What happens when the gilded cage shatters? She was the billionaire's wife, living a life most only dream of, until divorce changed everything. But what came next wasn't loneliness or despair. It was an incredible journey to finding happiness and love in the most unexpected places. You won't believe how her story unfolds. She was Akosua Mensah, the dazzling wife of Ghana's youngest billionaire, Kwame Bafor. Their faces graced every magazine cover in Accra. From champagne brunches at Labadi Beach Hotel to charity galas at Kempinski, her life gleamed with diamonds, designer heels, and 1,000 envious stares. But beneath the glitter lay silence, cold, echoing silence. Kwame's empire grew, his attention didn't. What began as love turned into polite distance and photo-perfect smiles. One day, that silence broke, with divorce papers delivered to her breakfast table, right beside her golden spoon. Akosua lost her title, her mansion in East Legon, and the world's applause overnight. For the first time, she heard her own heartbeat without the hum of wealth around it. Friends vanished faster than champagne bubbles. But instead of crumbling, she started over. She moved to Cape Coast, rented a small beach house, and opened a modest cafe called Nyara's Corner, named after the peace she longed for. The smell of roasted coffee beans replaced imported perfume, and the ocean's rhythm became her new luxury. Then fate waltzed in wearing fisherman's boots. His name was Kojo Arma, a marine biologist from Takoradi, humble, kind, and nothing like the men she'd known. He didn't care about her past headlines or failed marriage. He cared about her laugh. For the first time in years, she laughed freely, without calculating how it looked. Slowly, love found her, not in limousines or high rises, but on the sandy shores where Kojo taught her to mend fishing nets and see beauty in simplicity. By the time Kwame came back, regret heavy in his voice, Akosua had already found what his billions could never buy: peace, purpose, and true love. When Akosua left the glittering halls of Accra's elite, she thought she'd buried love alongside her old life. The tabloids called her the woman who lost everything. What they didn't know was that in losing everything, she was about to gain something far rarer, something money could never purchase. It all began on a quiet Tuesday morning. The Cape Coast air was heavy with salt and promise. Akosua stood outside her cafe, Nyara's Corner, struggling with a stubborn delivery crate. Her manicured hands, once accustomed to diamonds and champagne glasses, now wrestled with sacks of cocoa beans. That's when she heard a low, calm voice behind her. "Kojo, you're holding it wrong. Here, let me." Akosua. "Ah, you think you can do better?" she teased, brushing off sweat. "Kojo, not better. Just safer. You nearly broke your back, madam." Akosua. "I'm not madam anymore," she said, smiling for the first time that day. Kojo lifted the crate with ease, his palms calloused, his movements unhurried. Unlike the men she used to know, he didn't look at her with calculation. There was no flicker of recognition in his eyes. No, "Aren't you Kwame Bafor's ex-wife?" moment. Just quiet help, and then a nod goodbye. That was their beginning, unremarkable yet unforgettable. Days turned into weeks, and Kojo became a regular. He'd sit by the window of Nyara's Corner, nursing a cup of Akosua's special ginger lime tea while scribbling notes for his marine research. Sometimes he brought fresh seashells for her decor. Other times he'd bring fish for her kitchen. Their conversations started small: weather, ocean tides, the best way to fry red snapper. But slowly they grew into something deeper. "Kojo, you used to live in Accra, right?" Akosua. "Yes. But Accra lived through me more than I lived in it." Kojo. "So this cafe, this is your rebellion?" Akosua. "No. My resurrection." Kojo chuckled softly, that low, steady laugh that felt like sunrise. One afternoon, a sudden rainstorm flooded the street outside her cafe. The lights went out, and Akosua panicked. Flashbacks of her old life, where a single mishap brought a dozen assistants running. She reached for her phone, then stopped. Kojo appeared moments later, drenched and grinning. "You closed the cafe, I'll fix the breaker." He didn't ask. He just did. No cameras, no fuss, just soaked clothes and a smile that said you're not alone. That night, they sat by candlelight, sharing fried plantain and groundnut soup while thunder rolled over the ocean. And for the first time in years, Akosua didn't feel like she was performing. Another day, while sweeping the floor, Akosua's gold necklace, one of the last remnants of her marriage, snapped. Tiny beads scattered across the tiles. She froze, heart sinking. Kojo knelt, picking them up gently. "You can always thread new beads," he said. "Just make sure they tell your story this time." She laughed through her tears. That necklace became a new charm bracelet later, handmade by both of them. It wasn't gold, but it was priceless. During the Agua Feru Afahai festival, Kojo invited Akojua to join the community dance. She hesitated. She'd always been the guest of honor, not a participant. But he pulled her in, hands steady on hers, feet bare on the sand. The drums, the laughter, the warmth. It was chaos and joy intertwined. She wasn't the billionaire's ex-wife that night. She was Akojua, a woman reborn. Their connection wasn't built on grand gestures or lavish gifts. It grew through quiet mornings, shared laughter, and the soft rhythm of two hearts healing side by side. Kwame once gave her diamonds. Kojo gave her peace. And that, she realized, was the richest thing she'd ever owned. When word got out that Akojua Mensah, the former Mrs. Kwame Bafor, darling of Accra's elite, was now dating a marine biologist from Takoradi, Ghana practically dropped its morning coffee. Social media lit up faster than a harmattan fire. Yai, the ex-wife of a billionaire dating a fisherman, one blog headlined. Another sneered. From champagne to coconut water? Life comes at you fast. But Akojua didn't flinch. Not this time. She'd already survived gossip sharp enough to cut diamonds. The public shockwave. Her old friends from East Legon sent her concerned messages. Those polished pity texts wrapped in subtle insults. My dear, are you okay? You don't have to settle, you know. He seems sweet. But surely this is just a phase. Some even offered to help her find someone more her level. Akojua smiled politely, then muted the group chat. She'd spent too long living for their applause. This time, the only validation she wanted was from the mirror. And from the quiet joy she felt every time Kojo looked at her like she was the sunrise itself. At first, even Kojo hesitated. People will talk, he said one evening as they closed the cafe together. Let them, she replied, brushing flour off her apron. They talked when I married a billionaire. They talked when I divorced him. They'll talk when I die. The least I can do is make sure they're talking while I'm happy. And that was Akojua's turning point. The moment she stopped performing her life and started living it. She wore less makeup, tied her hair in scarves, walked barefoot by the shore, and laughed loudly without worrying about who was watching. At first, a few customers whispered when they saw Kojo helping behind the counter. Some avoided the cafe altogether. But others began to notice the calm in her smile, the glow in her eyes, and slowly, admiration replaced judgment. One afternoon, a journalist arrived at Naira's corner, notebook in hand. He wanted the real scoop. How could a woman go from penthouse glamour to a seaside cafe and call it joy? Akojua leaned back, her eyes soft but firm. Because for the first time, I wake up without pretending. Because peace tastes better than luxury. Because love feels real when you don't have to prove it. The journalist blinked, scribbled, and left without another question. Later, Kojo found her gazing at the sea. You okay? More than okay, she said. For once, I'm not trying to be anyone's story. I'm writing my own. The gossip didn't stop, it never does, but Akojua had changed. Every sneer, every whisper only made her smile wider. She'd learned that the loudest opinions often came from the unhappiest people. She didn't need a penthouse anymore. She had a porch where the ocean sang. She didn't need diamonds. She had Kojo's laughter and her own peace of mind. And when a former friend tried to mock her at a gala, "You used to be someone important," Akojua just smiled and replied, "I still am. I'm just not owned anymore." The ocean breeze carried a softness that morning, the kind that whispers, "You made it." Akojua stood at the doorway of Naira's corner, the same spot where her new life began, watching the sunrise stretch gold over the Cape Coast waters. Once upon a time, she woke up to glass walls and guarded smiles. Now, her mornings began with the hiss of brewing coffee, laughter from the village children, and Kojo humming an old Fanti tune as he arranged shells on the windowsill. And for the first time in years, her heart was quiet, not empty, just peaceful. Akojua's life used to look perfect on paper. The mansion in East Legon, the charity galas, the glittering social life. But somewhere between the parties and photo ops, she had lost herself. It took losing everything to realize that true wealth isn't counted in sadies or diamonds, but in peace of mind and purpose. Now, fulfillment was simpler. Watching the sun melt into the sea with Kojo's hand in hers, teaching young girls in the village how to bake, sponsoring their schooling quietly without cameras or applause. "I used to want the world to see me," she said once to Kojo, smiling as she wiped flour off her cheek. "Now I just want to see myself." Life, she learned, isn't always about starting over. Sometimes it's about starting right this time. Kojo didn't rescue her. He reminded her that she could rescue herself. Through his gentleness, she found courage again. Through their laughter, she found healing. They built a life not on status or spectacle, but on honesty, messy, unfiltered, beautiful honesty. One evening, as the tide rolled in and lanterns flickered across the cafe, Kojo proposed. No diamonds, no crowd. Just a simple sea glass ring and a promise. "Let's not build an empire," he said softly. "Let's build a life." She said yes, not because she needed him, but because she wanted him. And that made all the difference. When her story spread again, this time through inspiration blogs and morning shows, Akojua didn't hide. She shared it proudly, not as a fairy tale, but as proof that healing is possible. "You are not your past," she told the audience at a women's empowerment summit in Accra. "You can rise from anything. You can love again. You can start again. Happiness is not a luxury for the rich. It's a right for the brave." The crowd rose in applause, not because she was a billionaire's ex-wife, but because she had become every woman, flawed, fierce, and free. Her legacy was no longer written in tabloids or tied to a man's fortune. It was carved into the hearts of those who saw her and thought, if she can find peace after the storm, maybe I can too. Akojua had once been a symbol of perfection. Now she was a symbol of possibility. As the waves kissed the shore that evening, she whispered to herself, "I didn't lose my story. I just changed its ending." Moral of the story. Second chances aren't just about love. They're about rediscovering your worth. Be brave enough to break your own mold. The past is a lesson, not a prison. And sometimes your happily ever after begins after the heartbreak. Sometimes life takes away gold so it can hand you sunshine. When the gilded cage breaks, don't mourn the glitter, fly free. And so, Akojua Mensah's story reminds us that life doesn't end when everything falls apart. Sometimes, that's exactly when it begins. She walked away from gold-plated cages and found peace in simplicity, love in honesty, and strength in her own reflection. Her journey isn't just about romance. It's about rebirth. It's about daring to say, "I deserve more than survival. I deserve joy." So if you've ever been broken, underestimated, or told that your best days are behind you, remember Akojua's words. "I didn't fall. I landed." Because you too can land in peace. You can build again, love again, and rise again, not as who you were, but as who you were meant to be. The world may gossip. Let them. Your story isn't theirs to tell. If Akojua's journey moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that new beginnings are possible. Leave a comment. What does starting over mean to you? And remember, happiness isn't found in fairy tales or fortune. It's found in the quiet courage to begin again.